you. I noticed that Senator Griffin has joined us, but now I'll pass the ball to Senator Galvez.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So my first question is to Mrs. Joseph. A recent report by Professor Carter from University of Waterloo stated, quote, from 2000 and 2019, while oil and gas production grew by 47%, royalty revenues fell precipitously by 45%. Effective taxes from the oil and gas sector to government dropped from 15% to 4% over 2006 and 2018. As for jobs, in 2019, the oil and gas sector represented just 1% of direct employment in Canada. To save costs, the industry has aggressively cut jobs by 23% over 2014 to 2018 period, even as oil and gas production increased by 44%, reaching record highs. Put simply, before the COVID pandemic, Canada's oil and gas sector shed workers and provided far less revenues to the provinces as oil and gas production reached unprecedented levels, end quote. So when you say we should have economic targets and that they should be set, I would like to ask you if you can expand on that, and how do you expect your members to meet them under these circumstances?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Senator, for that question. So, I'm not familiar in detail with that research, but just looking at those numbers, they cover periods of decline in the price of oil and periods of height in the price of oil. And so there have been time frames in there where the government has been giving $12 billion in revenue on average from our sector. And right before the pandemic, it was getting closer to $7 billion on average in terms of government revenues. And those numbers that I provided in terms of the 500,000 jobs are from right before the pandemic and the years before. And someone can trivialize those jobs, but they're certainly important to those people. I would say that a key piece for our members is also our access to markets, our ability to get fair price for our revenues. And as the Senator may recall, there were a lot of constraints on our ability to access markets for oil and for gas, and those constraints remain in place until Line 3 expansion is completed, Trans Mountain Pipeline is completed. For the LNG industry, the Coastal Gas Link is to be completed, and all of those things require certainty in the policy environment, which are again linked to industrial strategy, which is linked to Canada's overall climate and economic strategy. So I think industry can perform in a context of certainty, and our industry generates significant benefits for Canada. And despite what this particular researcher says, there are many other sources, including Finance Canada, that might beg to differ.
Thank you very much for touching the international aspects. Only 2 weeks ago, we have heard about landmark decision in court about the importance of tackling the climate change and, of course, stepping up into forcing oil and gas companies to declare their climate risk analysis, their climate risk, and reducing emissions. And the International Energy Agency published a report saying that no new projects in oil and gas should be conducted if we want to avoid an increase in temperature of 1.5 or even 2 that will be detrimental to human life. So in the times when this is happening and insurance companies are not wanting to insure pipelines, how do you see the future of your industry and the role of playing in these cutting emissions?
Mm-hmm. So I think, Senator, you can see from many of the reporting that my members do that they are all committed to action on emission reductions, and they have invested significantly in technology and in other areas to achieve those reductions. And the court decisions we've heard have not changed that. That said, our members need certain contexts in which to be able to innovate, and that remains important. You asked a question about the IEA report, which was responded to by the Bank of Montreal's financial market groups as a fantasy island type of report. This is one scenario among many to achieve certain outcomes. And our industry believes that we can play an important role in the context of the world's pathway to this. And I would remind everyone at this table that before the pandemic, the world was consuming 100 million barrels of oil per day. At the low point in the pandemic with high lockdowns, people were consuming 91 million barrels a day. And today it's at 95 million, and it's going to go back to 100 million later, because this is the energy system we have. And the energy system can transform and diversify, and we all have a role to play in that. But the suggestion that we don't need this energy is not reflected in either the IEA's data or other data or the current facts around what supplies the food and global supply chain. And so I would highlight for senators that these are some of the facts on the ground, and we don't want signals to be sent that cause investors to lose sight of this or discount this, because Canadian producers are the most committed and have some of the highest environmental performance in the world compared to our competitors. And the competitors will eat that market share if Canadian industry does not play that role.